There's a certain narrative structure that's fallen out of popularity in recent times. Films that have multiple main characters whose stories seem detached from one another but all collide in the final act. Such films can be pretty eye-rolling as they seem to think that showcasing how everyone's actions has some effect on others and stating that we need to be more understanding of others' experiences is groundbreaking storytelling. Paul Haggis is no stranger to this, as apparent from his controversial Best Picture-winning Crash. Third Person is his second foray into that type of film. While at first it seems like the typical film from that genre, it soon starts to become apparent that everything we are seeing is being written by the main character, and that several characters are based off himself or people close to him. If caught early on, this can sideskirt a major issue these types of films have, which is one of their multiple stories being way more captivating than the others. Instead, it makes the viewer question what each character and their stories says about the writer himself, instead of waiting to switch to the more captivating story. The writer of the stories we're watching is Michael. With his novel, he is grappling with the death of his child, whose voice we hear in the opening moments of the film. Grappling with one's emotions with one's art is something we often see from filmmakers. Just look at the work of Charlie Kaufman. Each story segment has at least one or two stand-ins for Michael and his spouse and tackle different copes and emotions Michael is dealing with. The Julia story represents the self-denial Michael has about his contribution to the death of his son. It also shows how he was self-rationalizing the many different excuses he had for not living up to his promises and the death of his child. Julia's former spouse is another stand-in for him, as apparent from his profession and how he's doubting the merit of his art. The final moments of Julia's section shows Julia finally admit to herself that she did heavily contribute to the death of her child. It also communicates how Michael views that tragic day and how responsible for it he feels. The final words of the artist to his former spouse cuts way more deeply when you view the conversation as him thinking he killed his son.
I'm never gonna let you see him again. What? Get out. Get the fuck out.
No, you said that if I said that I did. No, I lied.
Get out.
The story, featuring the American tourist Scott and a scheme to con him, represents both Michael's insecurity of both his art and current and past relationships. Said relationships were littered with his numerous lies, which his wife saw through. She also knew, unlike his mistress, how his affair inadvertently contributed to the death of their kid. While the story is largely romantic, like his former marriage, it exists on a crumbling foundation with cracks incurred from two massive lies. Scott deals in shoddy replications of famous designs from high-brand fashion lines. This choice of profession for his character speaks to Michael's view of the quality of his work and how with his book he is creating a poor imitation of the reality of his life. The story with the fictionalized version of himself represents him grappling with the nature of his relationship with his mistress and examines his thoughts of his last couple of works. In addition to that, it shows how he yearns to tell his mistress the contribution she had to the passing of his child. This section also pretty much spells the entire film out for the audience.
God, I used to proofread your galley sweating. It was so fucking brave. Second book, less so. Third, fourth. Now you have random characters making various excuses for your life. Michael, I was frankly embarrassed to read it.
When stepping back and looking at Michael's novel, we see how he views himself, a self-conscious writer who's unable to communicate his inner emotions even to the ones closest to him. Rather than speak them out, he writes them out in the third person, locking them in a hardcover vault. While Paul Haggis's film may not be the most technically well-crafted from its genre, it's certainly one that stands out due to a wonderful narrative decision. It leaves the viewer to wonder whether any and every detail has significance. Even some less than stellar moments can be explained due to Michael's real life affecting his work, or the story itself being poorly written and overdone as to match his own view of his work and the fictional version of himself. It's very fascinating in that sense. It really blurs the line between the director's intent and the viewer's projection. Do you agree with my explanation of Third Person? Comment down below if you do or don't.